Hadyn Lewis was infected with HIV in the early 1980s from NHS blood products used to treat his haemophilia. He inadvertently infected his wife, Gaynor, before he knew. He contracted hepatitis B and C from the same NHS treatment, and 2 years ago he was diagnosed with liver cancer, almost certainly as a result of the Hep C infection. Despite a liver transplant, last month Hadyn was told he has a new tumour. This one is growing fast, and his doctors say he could have only weeks to live.
I'm very anxious, and you shouldn't be anxious about dying. You should be celebrating the fact that you've had a wonderful adventure and your life has been brilliant, which I always try and do. I think what's really important is that A, there's some closure to all this, and B, that Gaynor can continue with her life with some dignity and some contentment, that she's not going to be worrying about paying her gas bill or electric bill or any of the other things that every family worry about on a weekly, monthly basis.
It all started in the late 1970s and early 80s, when the majority of plasma used to make blood clotting factor VIII was imported into this country from prisons like this one in Arkansas. The prisons ran a market in blood from high-risk donors. Successive governments here have refused a public inquiry, in spite of warnings over the risk of infection, blunders, mistakes and cost-cutting that left 4,000 British haemophiliacs infected with fatal viruses. Last year, Lord Archer, the former Solicitor General, led an independently funded inquiry to find out what happened. He recommended compensation in line with other countries, notably Ireland. The government agreed to find a little more money, but only the equivalent of an annual minimum wage. Payments to the 500 or so widows are still only discretionary.
Lord Morris of Manchester.
So the disability rights champion Alf Morris, who fought on behalf of the thalidomide victims, introduced a private member's bill in the Lords to secure proper compensation.
The government here should provide at least as well as the Irish government is providing. And quite frankly, if we can't do as well as the Republic of Ireland, there's something wrong in the state of Denmark.
Ruth Rendell, the author and Labour peer, wrote a book called The Blood Doctor and has since taken up the haemophiliacs' cause. In Ireland, haemophiliacs have received payments of, on average, around £1 million. She thinks it could be the estimated £3.5 billion price tag that scares the government.
I am driven to say this because of the letters I've received, which they go straight to your heart. They show the misery and injustice that people feel that they are living under. £3.5 billion is a lot of money, but this is a case where I think it should be spent.
Next week, one haemophiliac is taking the Department of Health to the High Court. Andrew March was treated with infected blood products as a child. The department says Ireland was different because the government there admitted fault. Andrew March and his QC say that's wrong.
Hopefully this will flag up the whole situation of how appalling the compensation has been, and that some groups haven't even had compensation, and that from there the government might, be more generous.
The haemophiliacs have traced their story through official documents, though many were destroyed or missing. Eventually, the Department of Health did release several thousand documents as the Archer inquiry was taking place. But a Freedom of Information request by the BBC shows reluctance at the department to engage with the inquiry itself. Officials discuss how, though there's no evidence of negligence, wrongdoing or liability, there were concerns over officials appearing as witnesses, and that some documents are sensitive in respect of potential for criticism or embarrassment of former ministers and senior officials. It may be much harder to maintain the line that we're only prepared to release documents under FOI principles if officials are asked to defend this line publicly in front of the inquiry. In the past week, more documents have surfaced with campaigners, dating back to the late 1980s when the Conservative government faced litigation over the haemophiliacs' HIV infections. One of these documents appears to list material the health department wanted to keep back from the courts, claiming public interest immunity. The list includes submissions to ministers and material relating to indemnity against product liability. Now, the haemophiliacs believe this means legal assurances given to, say, drug companies or others against fear of being sued over the infections. The HIV litigation never reached the courts. At the last minute, the haemophiliacs were offered ex gratia payments of £20,000 and later a separate settlement deal. But Hadyn wants something more concrete than piecemeal payments.
Dear Prime Minister, I need to speak with you at your earliest convenience. I feel a face-to-face meeting may fully inform you as to what has taken place, because I do not feel you would knowingly ignore my and many others' plights.
Hadyn sees this as an issue that should be above party politics and settled once and for all in the limited time he has left, for the sake of the widows and families who at the very least need financial assurance at a time when little else is certain.